Hi everybody, this is Brenda at Handwork Maniac. Today is Friday, January 3rd, which only matters because it's the end of my Christmas vacation from work. I still have the weekend, but today's the last working day that I will be home instead of at work. I'll be back to work on Monday, which is sad, but that's okay. And then I realized I didn't make any of my videos yet that I was planning on making while I was home for the break. So today's my last day. I got to get it done. So I'm going to make 3 videos today. This one will be a finish parade of what I finished in 2019, as well as some, I'll show you my planners and how I do my planners for stitching at the end after the finish parade, and go over some stats for 2019. And then I'll make another video. I'll do a whip parade of all of the works in progress or whips that I'm starting the year with this year. And then I'll either just put I think I'll make a 3rd video that will be what I worked on this last week, my current whips that I worked on this week, and my rotation going forward, my plans for 2020. All right, let's get started. I have been watching so many videos of whip parades and planners, and it has been so much. So fun. Thank you to everyone who has made those videos. Those are my favorite videos to watch. The parades of either finishes or works in progress, and also planners. I love planners. I'm a planner person, so that has been so fun. And I will let you know which ones I have been watching when we get to the planner part. Okay, I was going to do my finishes for 2019 in the order that I finished them. So this is Adventure Awaits by Caterpillar Cross Stitch. It's on Mount Baker Blue 36 count Lakeside Linen with the called for DMC threads, and I used 2 threads, 2 strands of floss over 2 fabric threads. And for the rest of this parade, I'm just going to say something like 2 over 2, but that's what I mean when I say that. This was originally a monthly stitch along with Caterpillar Cross Stitch in 2018, and I was getting them in my emails but didn't have a chance to start it until the beginning of 2019. It took me 4 months to finish it. I worked on it for 4 months. Really enjoyed this. This was a fun stitch. Oh, I didn't think about where to put them when I was done. I finished Shores of Hawk Run Hollow next. This is by Carriage House Samplings. This is the 4th House of Hawk Run Hollow of the series that I have finished by them. You can see the other ones that I finished. My first few videos that I made at the very beginning, I showed all of my other ones if you want to go back and see those. This was on 40 count Picture This Plus linen called Heritage, and it's the called for NPI silks, and it is 1 over 2. I did change the blue. The top row is the called for blue that it called for, and I wanted it to be, because I changed the fabric, it changed the way the colors look. So when I got to the 2nd row, I changed to, it's a silk, Bahama Breeze, I believe, in this block and this block. This block didn't have any water in it, so it didn't matter. And for all of these blocks, I kept using Bahama Breeze until I got clear down to this last block, and then I used the same color as the top block just to tie it all in together. Loved this. Loved working on this. Love all the Hawk Run Hollow pieces. I need to start another one. I'm kind of missing Hawk Run Hollow. I think I've had a Hawk Run Hollow in progress for the last 15 years. This is the first time I've not had one since I finished this. This took me a little over 4 years to finish because it had a little hiatus there in the middle. Generally, I do about a block every 2 months. Quite often on Hawk Run Hollow, I was doing it as a stitch along with another friend. So there's that one. Then I finished Petite House by Sodastitch. It's on 40 count Silkweaver Rainbow. This fabric had a lot of, you can see it right here, this yellow color in it. So I chose a spot on this particular piece where there wasn't very much yellow because I liked the colors on this fabric better. Kind of, I don't know if you can see it, but it kind of looks like someone spilled Kool-Aid, different colors of Kool-Aid all over it. It was a fun piece to put this project on. It was the called for DMC, and I did 1/2. I did this as part of a activity with an online group that I belong to, and we started it the last weekend in January, and we had 20 weeks to finish it, and it had to be at least 120 by 120. And this one wasn't quite 120 by 120, so I also did another little piece I'll show you in a minute. But I love Sodastitch. Love their beautiful colors. They are a designer out of South Korea. You can find their patterns on Amazon as one of their official resellers, or there's lots of your regular people that you buy patterns from that carry them as well. So for the rest of that challenge, to make it 120 by 120 altogether, I also stitched this tiny little Busy Bee bag. It was a kit from Shepherd's Bush store in Ogden. And designers, they're designers and they have a store. They're close to, well, about an hour and a half away from me, so that's fun. The bag came already pre-made. It's a little zipper bag. Looks like this. And you just stitch right on the pre-made bag, which is a little awkward. I stitched in hand. I didn't have it on a hoop or anything, which I don't usually do, so that was also a little awkward. But cute little finish. And I finished that in a day, on the last day before the deadline of when the little challenge we were doing ended. So that was fun. And it came with all the threads and everything too. They felt like cottons when I worked on them. And then I did Mania in May. And when I do Mania, M-A-Y-N-I-A, I started 19 new things in May. Not new. I did 19 things, but 5 of them I like to do as current whips. So 5 of them were whips, and 14 of them were new starts, and 11 of the new starts had a monthly assignment. I like to work on the season of what season it is in that month, and so I purposely chose 11 things that went with the season of each month. I didn't do 12 because in May I'm just doing Mania all month, so I didn't need a piece for May. The season in May is Mania. So most of those 11 pieces I figured I could finish in a month. Several of them I knew were large and I would never finish them. So this was Back to the Future by Witchy Stitcher on 18 count black Aida with the called for DMC 2 strands over the 1 square of Aida. I did this for my anniversary in July because it was my 33rd anniversary, and my husband and I saw this movie when we were dating, so that was fun. And I put my anniversary information down at the bottom. So I finished that during the month of, I started it in May, just worked on it for 1 day, and then in July I picked it up again and finished it during July. Love those colors and how they show up on that black. I love using 18 count black Aida if I'm stitching on black. It's so much easier to see. And I forgot that right before that in June I finished a stocking for my daughter-in-law. The holiday kitchen stocking from the heirloom series that was in the Cross Stitch and Country Crafts magazines originally. You can now purchase them through the Cooler Design Studio website, Kooler, and they are also available on places like 123 Stitch. The designer is listed as Cooler Design Studio, Kooler. But I finished that. I don't have it here because I've given it to my daughter-in-law, Hannah. If you'd like to see it, go back to Flosstube number 43, where we showed how, my daughter and I showed how we fully finished them. So if you want to see, and I forgot, in between videos was when I finished it and then gave it away, so I didn't ever show it on video. But if you'd like to see it, except for that video where we were finishing them. So you can see it there. That took 6 months. I started it a little over 6 months because I started it in right at the end of November, I think last year, right after Thanksgiving, and then finished it while I was at StitchCon at the end of June because I wanted to do a stocking for my daughter-in-law Lauren as well, so I knew that this one needed to be done by the end of June so that I could start hers and have 6 months to finish hers before Christmas because I wanted them both done for Christmas. So there was that one. Next is Twisted Band Sampler. This is by Northern Expressions on 32 count Lakeside Linens bisque with the called for Avera Soie silks, and it is 1/2. It has there's 2 versions of this. It's a PDF download. There's one with the specialty stitches, which is the one I did, and then you can also purchase a version that does not have specialty stitches in it. It's all just full cross. And there's also another one that is a different colorway, much more neon colors, that I believe the model showed on her. It was on black. It was gorgeous. But I chose to do this one. And you can see it alternates. There's a band of cross stitch, and then this band here is all specialty stitches. This is cross stitch. This is also different kinds of specialty. And there's different specialty stitches in each band. They were all different. So it was a lot of fun. Fabulous charts that came with it, that not hard specialty stitches, just the kind where you come up at A, go down at B, come up at C, go down at D. Just have to follow the chart. They were not hard. Loved this piece. Love the colors, just beautiful. Although I did not love it because the repetitive, you know how I feel about borders because they're so repetitive. And this is basically strips of borders. I don't know what I was thinking when I started it, but I loved the way it looked, but I did not enjoy the repetitive nature of those strips, those bands. So this is a band sampler, but tilted on its side. And it took me 2 3/4 years to finish that. This is Summertime by Stitchery. This was the Mania piece that I had assigned to August, I believe. And I started it in May, just worked on it for 1 day and then, or 2 days, because sometimes at the end of May, I go back and work on everything one more time for those last few days in May. But then I didn't work on it again until August, and I picked it up and finished it during the month of August. It seems like it took me just a couple of days into September to finish it. It is by Stitchery on 32 count white even weave with the called for DMC, and it is 2/2. And that one was a lot of fun to stitch. I loved those colors. It was fun to work on in July in the middle of the hot summer. This is Seize the Day by Caterpillar Cross Stitch. It's on 36 count Lakeside Linen Maritime White, and I did do 2 strands of floss on this, so 2/2, because I loved the dense coverage on 36 count of 2/2. With the called for DMC threads, yes, it was the called for colors. It was a monthly mystery stitch along that started in January and ended in September, about 9 months. 8-9 months it took me to, I kept current with it and finished it. Enjoyed stitching on that. It was a fun, more of a contemporary piece design, but it was a lot of fun to work on. I worked on it several times up at Bear Lake, so that was fun. The top half is what's going on the beach, and the bottom half is what's going on under the ocean. Still available to purchase on Caterpillar Cross Stitch. So is Adventure Awaits as PDF downloads. Then I finished the sweater that I made. This is Pine Hill House by Debbie. It was a collaboration between Debbie Mum and Mill Hill. It calls for beads. I did not put any beads on it because it was on the front of a sweater. I did this with 8.5 count, 8.5 count waist canvas, and I used the entire piece of DMC thread, so 6 strands of DMC floss, the whole thing. I also used some yarn where it called for beads to kind of give it that some texture like beads would. It makes it stick up a little bit. It's fatter, thicker than the floss, so it gives it some dimension, some texture that sticks up. I did that, some red yarn up here. All of the white snow is yarn. There's a particular color right here in the snow that I used as yarn that was supposed to be beads. I did these pine cones a little different. They were supposed to have beads on them. They are just stitched, cross-stitched and then outlined. I started this a year ago, last November, I think. If you'd like to see how I set it up, how I figured out how waist canvas works, all of that, you can go back to Flosstube, my video number 7, and I give you all the information about how to use waist canvas on the front of a sweater. I was going to do it on a sweatshirt, but I couldn't find a sweatshirt in this kind of oatmeal-y, brown oatmeal color. So I went to Walmart and bought this sweater in the men's department. It is George brand, a large men's sweater. If you want to see me wearing it, then go back 2 or 3 videos ago and when I finished it and I wore it, modeled it for you on camera. But that was a lot of fun. I wanted to wear it to school during December on Fridays for Christmas, and the design extends further down. Just all of this snow and this path just goes down a lot further. I was sick of working on this project and wanted it to be over with and thought it looked fine, so I ended the hill a little earlier than it has less yard than the design calls for. But I thought it looked great. I tried it on and make sure the placement looked okay if I ended early, and it looked okay, so I ended early. I was really worried that the threads wouldn't pull out because I have had projects before where you couldn't pull those waist canvas threads out, but they pulled out just fine, so it was great. That took a little over a year for me to finish that. This is Lauren's stocking. My other daughter-in-law, the other stocking that I did this year was the music room. Also in that same series, also now available through Cooler Design Studio, either on their website or lots of other places like 123 Stitch are carrying them as well. And I did finish it on December 1st, and then Marie and I made a video where we fully finished them and then gave them. So I was able to give them to my daughter-in-laws a couple weeks before Christmas so that they could use them. So that was a lot of fun. On the called for fabric, which is 28 count even weave, because we wanted them to match all the stockings I originally did for my children, their husbands, and Kevin and I, we both have a stocking as well. The funny thing is I'm pretty sure I ordered 28 count mushroom Lugana even weave, because that's what the old stockings were stitched on. But when they were fully finished, I happened to put it next to one of our old stockings and realized that they are smaller, significantly smaller by like an inch. Almost an inch smaller. So now I'm wondering if I actually stitched it on 32 count mushroom Lugana. I haven't sat down with a ruler and my readers on to actually count the threads. I just thought, well, whatever it is, it's going to have to do, and I gave them to my daughter-in-laws. So that was weird to me. Either I stitched it on something like 25 count originally and didn't know it, which doesn't make sense to me either, because I would have had to order that fabric several times as I went through all the kids. I don't know what happened there, but they didn't end up the same size. So I still have some scraps of that fabric left. I need to sit down and actually count it and see if it is 28 count mushroom Lugana or if it's 32 count. Either way, the stockings turned out beautiful. They're just not quite the same size as their husbands, but that is okay. So that was in December 1st that I finished that with the called for DMC. I did everything the same, except it has these bells these little gold beads that go on this red ribbon and this red ribbon and this red ribbon that's running across the floor. Oh, you can barely see it right here. And the pattern calls for you to put little gold beads on there and then draw a little cross with a permanent marker so it looks like a jingle bell. And I actually purchased the smallest jingle bells I could find on Amazon were 1/4 inch. So they're quite a bit bigger than these beads would be, but they still looked okay on the ribbon. So I actually sewed on those tiny little jingle bells on here and here and here. That was the only change I made, I think. All right, and then Autumn Garden by Drawn Thread. This was also a Mania start in May. I just worked on it for the 1 or 2 days in May and then didn't pull it out again until I can't remember. This was October. This was October's piece. So I worked on this all during the month of October and was able to finish it by the end of October. And it used the called for threads, which was several different brands of silks. Some dinky dyes, some NPI. There was a thread gatherer in there, I think. But that was a really fun piece to stitch. Turned out beautiful. I loved the colors in it. It does have it's drawn thread, so it does have specialty stitches just in the flower heads. And not difficult ones. Again, just a chart where you come up at A and go down at B. And then across the bottom, it lists the names of the flowers. So that was fun. This is a seasonal series. This is Autumn Garden. There is winter, spring, and summer, and I do own all of those. Brian at Stitch, his YouTube channel, has done winter and maybe another one. I can't remember. We were kind of doing it as a stitch-along. I do plan on stitching the rest of the seasons. I'm just not in my current immediate plans. And this was such an exciting finish. This is Maisons et Nichoises in French. I think it translates, if I remember correctly, to houses and birdhouses. It is by Pear. It is out of print, no longer available. You'd have to find it on Etsy or Stash and Load, or not Etsy, eBay or Stash and Load, someplace like that. It calls for gentle arts, overdyed cotton threads. I did the called for colors. The pattern shows it on two different, the cover of the pattern is just a computer generated picture of the pattern. It's not an actual model. And it shows it on a light blue background, and then it also showed it on a tan background, and I chose this tan background. This is Lakeside Linens 40 count Pear. Pear can come in so many different colors. This is a very tan-ish pear, but it does have a slight green cast to it. And it took, that's the one I didn't write down, 5 or 6 years to finish this one. Only pulled it out every once in a while. All full cross, no partial stitches, no blended threads, a very little bit of back stitch on the birds, I think. And my daughter Catherine took it home for Mother's Day. My birthday and Mother's Day are really close together. She takes a couple pieces home, or has the last few years, taken them home and worked on them for me, ones I was just sick of, and would do a part on them that she knew the part I didn't enjoy. So she took it home. I had done probably from here over to about here, and she took it home at that point and did this white picket fence all the way across, and then did like the divider bars in the windows. She did the divider bars on all the windows because she knows that I don't like the repetitive nature of windows either. So she did that as a gift for me, which was really nice because not only did it get part of the windows done, but it also placed the houses. And there was not one mistake. As I stitched across, every single one of those window dividers was in the exact right place, and the fence was exactly where it was supposed to be. So that is amazing. She counted very well. So that was so nice of her. There is that one. I'm so excited about that one. All right, I have to turn my paper over. We just have a few more. We're almost done. Next is Shepherd's Fold, which I started 4 years ago. It is, I'm going to show you on here because it's easier to see. It is a group of smalls by Shepherd's Bush. This is a box top that goes on a round, like a shaker box. And then it has all these smalls that goes inside. A pin cushion, a needle roll, a ruler holder, a needle book, and then a little scissor fob. And I started the whole thing 4 years ago. And they were all little kits, so it just came with the fabric and the threads. It seems to be a 32 count linen. I had a crazy plan. I don't like working on these little tiny pieces of fabric because I don't stitch in hand. I could have done it with a hoop, but I had this crazy idea at the beginning. My friend and I had this crazy idea, hi Sandra, that we would sew all the pieces of fabric together into one, all the little kit pieces of fabric, keeping track of which one went to which part. Sew them all, I marked the middle of each one before I did this, and then I sewed them all together in one big long piece, which kind of made a ragged edge because sometimes they didn't. It took a while to figure out how to make a rectangle. I had to add a couple of extra pieces of fabric so that we could put it on scroll rods because we thought that would be easier. And that didn't work out very well. So after maybe the first 2 years of trying to work on that, I finally took it off the scroll rods, cut it into 2 pieces, and just worked on it with my 11 by 11 Q snaps. And I was able to finish it that way. So here's the pin cushion pillow. Here's the needle roll, which has this rickrack sewed into it. I've left the edges on there because when you sew the needle roll together, those will disappear into the seam. This is the front and back of the scissor fob. This is the box top. This is the needle book. And then this is the ruler holder. It's really long and then it folds in half. So that, at least the stitching on that is finished. I don't have any plans to fully finish that anytime soon. Somewhere in the future, I will fully finish all of those little pieces. Fully finishing where you have to stitch by hand is another one of my not so favorite things, so I tend to put it off. All right, this is Wild Salt Air by Hands On Designs. I started this at StitchCon. I really wanted to try something with the sulky threads. They look like this. They are thicker than embroidery floss, so you can just use 1 strand on 28 count, and it has the same type of coverage as 2 strands of DMC. So I really wanted to try them out. And they had them for sale at StitchCon in their little annex store and also at the Keepsakes store. So I bought some threads. I had to do my own conversion. They actually, in the annex, had a little package of these threads that was specifically put together for another one of her hands-on designs. And it looked like very similar colors to what was in this piece. So I bought that pack. I had also bought another pack while I was at Keepsakes that were just pretty because I wanted to try them. And those 2 packs together ended up with enough colors to do this design. I did have to combine, there was a couple of colors in this pattern that were slightly like 2 colors of pink or 2 colors of, and I just combined those and just used 1 color because I was just going with what I had. So these are the colors that I used from the Sulky line. In the description box below, I will give you a list of those colors. It was a lot of fun to work with. There, as other people have mentioned, When you stitch with it, it's not 2 strands of DMC kind of lays flat, because it's 2 strands next to each other, almost like a tiny ribbon, flat ribbon shape. These are a thicker round thread, so it stays round as you stitch with it, so it doesn't lay quite the same, but it was beautiful. It was so fun to stitch with. I think when I try it again, and I'm going to do another piece with these, I think I'll try 32 count. This was on a piece of color and cotton that I bought at StitchCon, and it was a limited edition color, so it doesn't have a name. And this is how it turned out. It was a lot of fun to stitch on. And this is 28 count. Like I said, next time I'd like to try it on 32 count. Because as you can imagine, a flat ribbon, 2 pieces of DMC floss, is going to cover up more of the fabric than a round, thicker piece of floss. The coverage is still really nice, but I want to try it on 32 count and see what that looks like. Then in December, this was I started it for Mania. It's Let It Snow by Stitchery. So I worked on it a couple of days in May. And then it was assigned to be my December piece. So I worked on it in December, and was able to finish it by the end of December. I think I finished it on December 31st. Cute, cute piece. Loved the colors in it. This is 40 count Silkweaver Cascade with the called for DMC 1/2. That was a really fun stitch. And this was the last thing I finished on December 31st. This is The Temperature Garden by Stitch and Mommy. She has an Etsy store as well as a YouTube channel. She also has a temperature quilt pattern and a temperature hot air balloons pattern. And her new one for 2020 is a tree that is so beautiful, and all the little leaves are the different colors for the temperatures for each day of the year. Love that tree. I bought her temperature garden pattern from her, purchased it from her, and then I adapted it a little bit because I was using this not to track the temperature. I was using it to track my migraine headaches because I struggle with keeping a good, accurate headache journal for my neurologist. And I knew if I was stitching a project, I would be much better at writing the data down every day. And it worked beautifully at making me write the data down every day. It totally fulfilled its purpose. I love looking at it and just kind of getting an overall picture of the year and seeing that I did much better in the summer on my 6 weeks off from school, which does not surprise me at all. And then when I have long breaks from school, I can definitely see that. So stress is definitely a huge contributor, one of my triggers. I learned a lot of things about myself while I did this. It totally worked for what it was meant to do. And I did title it and put the year on it so I would remember what it was later and what year it was. I am not going to stitch another one in 2020, but I am still going to keep track. What I found out about myself was that every time I worked on it, it made me focus on the headaches, which is a good thing in a way, because you're thinking about it and looking at it and going, wow, that was a bad week. What was happening there? But which is great for the first 10 minutes that you're working on it, but then for the next hour or two as I was trying to get it caught up, it was a lot of time where I was focusing on the headaches, and I don't want to spend that much time dwelling on the headaches. I do a lot better when I'm not thinking about them. So for this coming year in 2020, and also that there are several data points that I'm tracking, and I had to choose one data point to track on that. I kind of had 2 data points combined together that I was tracking on that, but you can't do every piece of information on there. That's just wasn't feasible. So for 2020, I will do a very similar thing, but I'm just going to do it in my bullet journal as a graph with colored pencils. because that's a lot quicker to do than stitching. And I'll be able to track a lot more data points. And then, but I still get to see the whole year all on this 2-page spread so that it's easier to see trends. And I will still use color, probably very similar colors to what I used in there. So, sorry, more than you ever wanted to know about that project. That is all my finishes for 2019. This was my Stitch 9 challenge, which was great for me. It really motivated me to finish these 9 projects. And most of these that I chose in last January were ones that had been whips for a long time and I wanted them to be done. So this was great activity. Thank you, Michelle at Farm Girl. That was fun. The only one that I did not finish is this one, Peaceable Kingdom. But I would really like to finish. That's on my list for 2020. So I would love to. Oh, and I did not finish this one, Victorian Charm. I am so close. I just have like this little bit to go. So that one should be done in the next couple of months as well. So I finished everything else but those 2, and this one was very close. If I'd had another week, I could have finished this one. But I loved that challenge. That was fun. I've made a list for 2020 of 10 projects just because that was a more round number and it made me happier. So similar idea. All right, that finishes the finish parade. Now I'm going to talk about my planner for a minute. If you are not interested in planners whatsoever, you can end now. I'm not going to give you any more interesting information if you don't do planners. If you are interested in planners, then I will do that now. I keep a bullet journal that I carry with me every day, everywhere that I go for the most part. Goes to work with me every day, goes, you know. And I will put a link in the description box below what this planner is if you're interested. I bought them on Amazon, but I can give you the link of what kind it is. This is my daily planner for all of my life, and it just has a couple of pages in it for stitching, which is what I tried out in 2019. So I had this page, which is a list of starts and a list of finishes. I just made 2 boxes to draw those in. I did write down when I finished it, probably the date when I started it, and then in red I put the date that I finished it, if I finished it. This green piece of paper was Mania, lots of starts for Mania. And then I started the year with 19 whips, so I wrote that number here. I ended the year with 28 whips. And then full coverage pages completed was 1, which is kind of cheating because it's the Disneyland piece and it doesn't have, the whole page isn't stitching. It's mostly just on the bottom 4th because it was the top of the design where it's a ragged edge. But I'm still counting that as a 1-page coverage. So this was all that I tracked in 2019. And then over here, at the beginning of the year, I made a list of all of the whips that I was starting the year with. That was what was on this page. And then the only other page I had in this journal was I did a Mania calendar. I drew this at the beginning of the year, but did not fill it in until May when I knew for sure what I started every day. And it's upside down. The green ones, the ones written in green were the 5 whips that I did, and the ones written in blue were the new starts. And I just kept track of what I started on what day. And then this page next to it was just a page that I used from January through April of ideas, what I was going to do for Mania. I was kind of working through my plan. I would sit there. If I heard about a pattern I really liked, I'd write it down, or I'd do some possibilities. This was just kind of a playing around page, deciding what I was going to do. And I just realized I'm missing one journal, and I can't remember where it is. So then for stitching, I did the Book of Days by Needlework Press. It's a soft bound, a little bigger than 8.5 by 11. I'm sure you've seen it. There's one for 2020 as well. It is just a month-long spread for each month. And it has some cute little sayings about stitching, handwork in it. It's a beautiful little planner. very thin, just a little paper bound thin little thing. Has a beautiful sampler on the front cover. I was using that for my stitch, that stayed right by my stitching, and I was writing down what I stitched on. I just keep writing down on each day what projects I stitched on that day. Part of the year I was really good at it. There's months that don't have anything written on them. I'd keep track of starts and finishes on there. I'd put started and put a big circle around it on a day that I started something. And it has a little strip on the left-hand side of just lines where you can make notes. And I'd put my monthly rotation, write that on there, and then I'd also keep a running list of starts and finishes for that month over on the side too sometimes. So I started that. That worked really well until we hit the summer. And then after, I think July, I was really busy and wasn't writing in there. And then around October or November, I was watching Teresa Little Stitches, I believe, YouTube channel. I will put it down in the description box below. I really like her. She's in Great Britain. And she showed her planner that she uses. And I thought, ooh, I love that planner. I should do, and talked about a couple things that she tracks. And so I switched to that type of a planner in November. And that one is a disc planner. Looks like this. Well, I had a different cover. This is my new one for 2020. So what I love about, I would either do a disc planner or a loose leaf, because I love being able to take pages in and out and changing your mind. That is my favorite thing about a bullet journal, which I'll show you more of in a minute. Because each week I can change the layout for the next week and do something different. If this is not working, I can try something else. And that's great about a disc bound or a loose leaf as well. You can try something out, and if you don't like it, you could put different pages in and try that out next. I generally am doing the same. There's a monthly spread where I put my monthly goals, my monthly rotation that I'm going to try out. I put, if I have some stitching dates coming up, something that has to do with stitching date-wise, I'll write that on this month view. And then on the weekly view is where I'm going to write what projects I worked on every day, how many, if I wrote, I kind of try and guesstimate. I don't keep really good track, but usually at the end of the day I can guesstimate about how many hours I've been stitching that day. So I'll write that at the bottom on the weeks that I get it done. And in this middle section, I'll just probably write if something interesting happened that day that has to do with stitching, like a friend came over to stitch, or I was at a retreat or something, I'll put that in that middle column. Jen Lee of Quirks and Stitches has created a stitching planner, a PDF version of a stitching planner that you can purchase from her. She has an Etsy store set up so she can sell that planner, and she talked about it in her planning video just last week that I watched a couple weeks ago. She's the one that does 24 hours of cross stitch, those marathon events. And there's a Facebook group that you can join where they talk about they have monthly challenges and events. It's lots of fun. So I purchased her planner and printed some of the pages out that I wanted to use in my planner. Hers is formatted for 8.5 by 11, I believe. It's the bigger version. Sammy J Stitches YouTube channel. I was watching her video and she gave us the fabulous tip of you just open up the document in Adobe Acrobat, because it is a PDF file, and you print it. Instead of printing it at 100%, you change the scale to 84%, and then it's the right size for this size of a planner. So that's what I did. I printed them out on a little bit heavier weight paper, 24-pound paper, so it would be more similar to the other pages in this planner. And then I had to cut them out and punch them to go in here. So for each month, I'm going to use her calendar page. And I might use that to plan exactly what I'm going to do to meet her challenges. It's probably what I'll do. And keep track of the different challenges on that day. Like if I need to be keeping track of how many minutes I worked on a piece, whatever the particular challenge is, I'll use that to track that. She also has a monthly page where there's she tells you a holiday on each day. So there is a challenge related to stitching something that has something to do with that holiday, and you can get very creative with how it has to do with that holiday. And then she also does a challenge each month called Acrostic, where it spells something over here, and then you can use it. There's a couple of different kinds of challenges you can do that have to do with these letters of the alphabet during the month. If you are interested in those, definitely check out the Facebook group that explains all of those challenges. I tried a couple of times last year and was not very good at keeping up with it, so I'd like to try again this year. Those are fun. Teresa Little Stitches showed a couple of pages that she is tracking in an Excel file that she created that you can get from her on her YouTube channel. She just has it out there for free. And then she also referenced another Stitcher who I believe does YouTube channel as well that has created a planner that you can purchase and buy. And I went and looked at that but didn't end up purchasing it. But just watching Teresa's channel on her Excel file about some things she tracks through her Excel file gave me an idea of some things I wanted to track. And I did not use her Excel file. I actually just hand drew a page. So for each month you have 1 through 30 or 31 across the top here. These are the pieces I'm planning on working on in January, and I'll just do a little tick mark on the days that I work on those pieces. And then I have room, if I end up working on something I wasn't planning, didn't know about when I drew the page, I can add it down here. But I think it'd be kind of fun to see how many days I worked on each project. So that's in my January section. And that will be at the beginning of each month. I will have those 4 pages at the beginning of each month. Then I only have the first 6 months of dates in my planner. And then at the end of the calendar part, I have a page to remember my shopping list and my wish list of, you're watching YouTube and you see that pattern and you're just like, oh my gosh, I would love that. So, but then you forget about it and the craziness, and 2 months later when you're actually shopping, you're thinking, there was a pattern I wanted. What was it? So I have a page, and I put them both on the same page because they're very related. This is just I need to remember to buy Q-snaps, or I need to remember that I ran out of 932 and I need to buy some more. That will be over here. And then this will be patterns I'm interested in buying. And then when I actually go shopping, these 2 lists kind of go together. So it made sense to me to put them on the same page. Then I have a yearly section, which just duplicates what is in my bullet journal that I carry around with me every day. That's all it is. It's a place for starts and finishes, place to record how many whips I started the year out with, ended with, and how many full coverage pages, and a list of the whips that I am carrying into 2020. Everything that I have right now that's been started. Then I did a very similar thing to that one I did for each month, but only this one is for the year. And I just have the months across here: January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August. Then I have a list of every whip that I'm starting the year with. It goes on to the second page. And I will add more as I start them. And I'll just put a little tick mark if I worked on that during that month. I thought that would be interesting to look at the end of the year, how many different months I worked on that piece. I was going to say something else and I can't remember what it was. Oh, I won't, these, like that monthly one and this yearly one, as long as I'm keeping the data on the daily pages of what I worked on that day and how long I worked on it, I can easily catch these up later. I won't be catching these up every day. Probably once a month I'll sit down and catch up these tick mark ones. I hope that made sense. This was my page from 2019 when I started in November. I made with this new kind of planner, I made a list of my yearly goals, which was basically my Stitch 9 goals. I had some other possibilities of things I might be able to finish by the end of the year. And then this was my monthly assignments that I still had left from Mania. Pieces that were assigned to a particular month, I had listed those. And I liked that page a lot. So, oh, and then I started doing, in November, I had written down my goals for the month of November. And then didn't get to that in December. But I liked that format, so I'm doing it again for 2020. So these are my yearly goals for 2020. These are the 10 projects I decided I would really love to finish in 2020. I'd love to finish more, but those are my priority ones. And then this is my Mania monthly assignments. I already know January through April because that was part of last year's Mania. I haven't filled out the rest of the year because I won't know what those are until I finalize my plans for Mania, probably the last day of April. And sometimes that changes during Mania. So I'll fill those out later. And then I started my monthly goals. These are my goals for January. I want to finish Words to Live By. Well, I'll do that in my, I'll tell you what, I'll go through all of those in my video for my regular video that I do in not the next video, but the video after that. You'll see them all together, so it won't matter. I'll do that in my plans for 2020 video. And I have little boxes where I can check it off. And I'll keep doing that throughout the year. I have a couple blank pages, so I can just, I'll do February and then I'll do March, but I do that at the beginning of each month. Then I have a tab for Mania, because it needs its whole own section. This is a calendar similar to the one in my bullet journal. I think I'll redraw this page and make those boxes bigger. But I won't fill that out until May for sure. That's the for sure what I actually started on each day. And then these are my pages where I'm keeping track of ideas of projects that I'm thinking maybe I'll start for Mania. And which ones are going to go with which month. And then I want to keep in this journal my plans as the years go by. So I just did a color copy of this page from 2018 out of my bullet journal because I didn't want to redraw the whole thing again. So I just made a copy and taped it in here of that page and that page because I wanted them in here kind of as a history. I thought that would be fun. Then the next tab is 24 hours, hashtag 24 hours of cross stitch, because it needs its own section. She has a page in her planner called Monthly Focus Planner, Monthly Focus Tracker, where she gives you 2 lines for each month. I'm going to use this page. I really like doing a 30-minute challenge every day. So it's a piece that I'd really like to move along a little quicker, but I don't want to just drop everything and only stitch on that. So I just do at least 30 minutes on it every day. The first thing I do when I sit down to stitch, I pick up that piece and work on it for at least 30 minutes, sometimes an hour if I know I'm going to be stitching for several hours that day. So I will probably use this page to keep track of that 30-minute challenge piece. And at the beginning of each month, or if it changes partway through the month, I'll write down what my 30-minute challenge pieces were for throughout the year. That's what I'm going to use that page for. She also has a year-long challenge with, you can either do 12 pieces or 24 pieces that have something to do, again, very loose. You can make that as loosely or as tight as you want. It has something to do with that letter of the alphabet. Kind of a challenge for you to finish several projects, either 12 or 24 by the end of the year. It won't be 24 for me because a lot of my projects are too large, but I could probably do 12. So I'm going to try and figure out if I can make this work for 12 because that would be fun. Then 4 times a year. Right now the dates they're thinking about are right here. There's one in January, one in April, one in July, and one in November. She does her 24 hours of cross stitch marathon. You can either sit down and stay up all night and cross stitch for 24 hours straight, or, which I can't do anymore, I'm too old, I'd be so miserable. Or you can just keep track of your time and see if you can stitch for 24 hours altogether throughout the 3 days. Yeah, it's 3 days. So, which is probably what I will try. So here's a page from her planner. This page is a list of everything that you worked on during that 24 hours, or that you would like, or you can plan ahead and say, these are all the pieces I'm going to. She gave you 24 lines because a lot of people like to work on a different project every hour. Lots of different ways to do 24 hours of cross stitch. She also gave you a planning page so that you could plan which piece, what you're going to work on each hour, and then your entertainment plan. Maybe you're going to watch some movies and these movies, and then your food, a place to plan your food for that 24 hours. She has lots of other pages in her planner that are fabulous. Those are just the ones that I pulled out to use in my planner. You can also you could go to a copy store, if that would be easier for you, and just have them print the whole planner for you and put it in a binder of some kind, and just have that be your planner if you want. It is a gorgeous planner. The next section I have is retreats. And I don't have anything in here yet because that is the one thing that I have not, that I wanted to get done over the break that I did not get done yet. One of the things I really struggle with at retreats is names and faces. That is not an easy thing for me. But when I meet someone at a retreat and remembers things we talked about, or pieces they showed me, or maybe they're a regular commenter on my channel, I want to remember them on what they look like so that the next time I see them, I'll remember who they are. Or if they comment after that, I'll know who they are. So my plan for this section is going to be a bit of a scrapbook. Usually there's a Facebook page associated with a particular retreat where people post lots of pictures during the retreat. So that helps me put a name with a face usually. Or I'll take pictures during the retreat that help me remember people that I know. And then I will print those pictures and glue them in here or attach them somehow in there. And I'll put next to the pictures who they are and some things about them, why I know them, or what happened during the retreat, or, funny little things so that I can remember. I remember things that happened. I remember stories. Once you remind me what your name is and how I know you, then I can remember, oh, you showed me that beautiful piece of this, or, oh, you comment all the time, or, oh, we went to lunch together and this happened. I can remember that. I just can't put the name with the face and then all the time with the story. So that will help me remember my memories from the retreat and what happened. I will also have a little just bullet journal type. This is what happened on this day. We went here for breakfast, I went out to lunch with these people, and then they had this, I won this drawing giveaway. I'll just do a very minimal of what happened each day and some pictures so that I can remember the people that I met there. And it's also just fun to look back and look at it and remember those memories. So that retreat section, I don't go to a lot of retreats. In 2019, it was only 2 retreats. So that won't take a lot of work to keep that up for me. But that's what I'm planning on doing in that section. That is my just stitching planner. This is a little book I started 4 years ago, I think. I went back through all of the finishes that I could find or had records on and wrote them down, and then started to keep it current. If I start a piece, I write it down in here. Who the designer is, what fabric I started it on, whether I was doing it 1/2 or 2/2, if I changed some of the colors, if I worked on it at a significant place, like I started it at StitchCon, or I was working on it at Bear Lake and it got licorice on it or something, any interesting things. When I usually don't think, when I finish the piece, I go in and write down when I finished it. And then that's when I usually remember I write down a couple of interesting things that happened while I was stitching on it. Either interesting places or something that happened to it, or I had to throw it out and restart it, or it got a hole in it, or, stuff like that. And I've been doing really well the last 4 years keeping this up. Sometimes I forget to write in it for like a couple of months later. I'll think, oh, did I ever write down that piece that I started? But it's been easy for me to go back and add it in. So I will keep keeping this. This is kind of the master list. If someone ever asks me, what fabric did you do that on? And I can't remember, I can always go back and look it up in here. This is where my master list of information is for everything I start. And it's chronological, obviously. In another 10 years, this is going to be really hard. If I'm trying to go back and find a piece, it's going to take a while if I don't remember exactly what year I started it. So that's the only downside, is that it's chronological and I just have to go back and search until I find the piece that I'm looking for. If you kept this in a digital file, obviously then you could just do a search and that would be a lot easier. But I'm a paper person and this makes me happy. So this is my master list. And then, as I said, I keep a bullet journal. I started doing that year before last. I've really enjoyed it. I really like it. I'll show you this. This is this year's that I'm just starting. And I'll put a link below of where I bought this on Amazon. I'll give you a link to what it was. It's pre-numbered and it has the index pages pre-printed. I haven't filled out the index yet. This is just a little bit about bullet journals. If you're not interested in bullet journals, then you can end the video now. This is my future planner page where you keep track of dates that are going to be further away than this month, and you need a place to write that down so you don't forget, like the retreat in June, and you don't want to forget what dates those are. I have a page for several things that I just keep track of through the year, like quotes, my master packing list, because I'm terrible sometimes at forgetting things when I pack. I have a page where I keep track of any significant medical events that happen during the year, but I need to write down the date of that medical thing. I have Spotify for my music, and sometimes I hear songs when I'm somewhere else and I want to remember that I want to go to Spotify and get that on my playlist. I have books I've read. I'll keep track of books that I have read during the year, and I also want to write down when people tell me about a book and I want to read that. I have a place to write that down. These are my stitching pages that I already showed you, my Mania pages. This is my monthly spread. I do a month on this side, and then I have a place to write some goals and notes, my rotation for I guess I do have stitching stuff on this page every month, my rotation for the month and my Flosstube notes. This is a page where I keep track of some monthly habits that I would like to track every day. I have a gratitude page where I try and write down at least one sentence every day of something I am grateful for. This is a memories page. Let me show you in an old one. I have a hard time keeping that up, but I so love it when I do. It brings me a lot of joy. Let's see if I can find one. Like this, where you just write down the fun things that happened that month. I do better when I do it as I go. I always, what has worked out really well for me is to keep a sticky note on this page at the beginning of the month, and I just quickly write down so I don't forget what day it was or what it was I wanted to remember. And then at the end of the month or somewhere during the month, I can use the information on the sticky note to draw these. They're just in different colored markers going different directions. It's just a fun page to look at to remember your memories for that month. But like I said, I have a hard time keeping that up. This is the headache journal that I already told you about. This is my weekly spread where I write down in more detail what's going to happen each day, maybe what we're having for dinner, some health habits I want to track, a to-do list, things I'm trying to remember to get done that week. This is the page that I love to draw on. I don't always get this. It takes a while to draw this page every week. And so if I don't have time, I just skip this page. But when I do have time, this page makes me happy because I love the color and the drawings on it. And then this is my daily pages. This is where I'm writing down appointments I have that day, or something that happened, or information I need to remember each day. And over here is where I keep track of my headache information along this line over here. This is the daily nitty-gritty, and I kind of use this as a journal as well. Helps me process traumatic things or stressful things. Usually at the end of the week on Sunday, I'll go back in and write down what I remember, just a couple of things that happened on each day. So I kind of helps my memory, helps me remember what happened this week, helps me retain information in my memory to write it down. You know how your teacher was always making you write things down, because the process of writing it down helps you remember it, because you're using more senses when you write. So it also helps me. I try really hard if something was very stressful or traumatic to write it down, because just that process of writing it down and thinking through it for a minute helps me process that emotion. And then and it's also a journal of kind of what's happening in my life. I love to go back and read through those. And then I continue those pages throughout the year. I love bullet journals because if that particular layout isn't working for you, then the next week or the next month you draw a different page, try something different. If something happens in the middle of the year that you want to start tracking, you can just start that page wherever you are in the journal and then write in the index where that is so you can find it later. This one is a beautiful pink. I'm sure it's not real leather, it's faux leather, but it feels really nice. Almost like, it's just almost soft like suede almost, but not furry like suede. Anyway, I think I'm going to enjoy this one this year. It's a little bit thicker than the ones I usually carry around, but it's got the really nice, thick paper. This has thicker paper. This one from last year, I put these stickers on the front. This did not come with it. It was just green. It was much thinner and smaller, which was easier to carry around, but thinner pages, quite often the marker would show through on the other side. All right, I think that is everything for this video. And I will reset for my whip parade if you were interested in that, and I'll make that video in just a few minutes.